He said, "Stop assuming I'm with someone else. You're so insecure." I looked at him across the coffee shop table, saw the way his eyes didn't stay on mine for more than a second, and I replied, "If you say so." I'm 33, and I'd been with my boyfriend for 5 years. We didn't live together, which had always been his preference. He called it independence, space, boundaries. I called it respect. I respected a lot of things I probably shouldn't have. The problem didn't start the night I caught him. It started months before, in the small changes that made me feel like I was reaching for someone who kept stepping back. Longer gaps between texts, vague answers about weekends, plans that never included me, canceled dinners that somehow always happened when I was the one asking. When I tried to talk about it, he made it my flaw. Clingy, needy, controlling, insecure. He said wanting to spend time with my boyfriend of 5 years was pathetic, and I swallowed it because gaslighting doesn't feel like a punch at first. It feels like doubt, like you're the problem for noticing your own pain. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, his tone, the way he raised his voice just enough to make me shrink without drawing attention. Around 2 in the morning, I remembered something I hadn't thought about in months. 3 months earlier, he'd asked me to help set up a new tablet for work. He wanted everything synced. I logged into his apps to connect them, including a messaging app he used constantly. I hadn't gone looking for it later. I didn't want to be that woman. But at 2 a.m., shaking in the dark, I opened my laptop and logged in. There were dozens of conversations. Most were nothing. One wasn't. A woman's name I didn't recognize. A thread longer than all the others combined. 4 months of messages. Good morning. Good night. Pet names. Inside jokes. Plans disguised as work. Trips he told me were with friends. And then the line that made my stomach turn into ice. Can't wait for tonight, 8 p.m. at the usual place. Tonight. While he was calling me insecure, he was scheduling her. And the part that still haunts me is this. When I finally let him know I had access to that app, he didn't apologize first. He panicked. He started deleting. That's when I understood the truth. He didn't fear losing me. He feared being caught. I was 33 when everything finally came into focus, but the story started 5 years earlier, back when I believed patience was the same thing as loyalty. I met Evan through a mutual friend's birthday dinner. Nothing dramatic, no instant sparks. Just an easy conversation that stretched longer than the night was supposed to. He was charming in a restrained way, thoughtful, articulate, the kind of man who listened carefully and made you feel like your words mattered. When he asked for my number, it felt natural, unforced. From the beginning, Evan was very clear about one thing. He valued his independence. "I don't rush milestones," he told me early on. "I need space to be myself." At the time, I admired that. I had my own career, my own routines, my own life. I didn't need to be attached at the hip to feel secure. When he said he preferred not to live together, even after the first couple of years, I respected it. He said it helped him show up better in relationships. I believed him. We settled into a rhythm that looked healthy from the outside. Weeknight dinners, weekend brunches, vacations once or twice a year. Family holidays split carefully. I met his parents, he met mine. We talked about the future in abstract ways. Nothing concrete, just someday. I told myself that was enough. Evan worked long hours and loved reminding me how demanding his job was. I admired his ambition. I supported him when he was stressed. I adjusted my schedule around his. I was flexible, understanding, patient. Too patient? There were signs early on that I chose not to examine too closely. He guarded his phone in subtle ways, always face down, always within reach. If a message came in while we were together, he'd glance quickly and respond later. He said he didn't like being rude. He had friends I barely knew, coworkers I'd heard stories about but never met, weekends where he was busy but vague about details. At the time, I told myself that trust meant not interrogating the person you loved. I thought love meant giving the benefit of the doubt. Whenever I expressed a need, he framed it as pressure. When I asked for more time together, he called it dependency. When I asked where things were headed after 5 years, he said I was rushing him. Still, there were good moments, real ones. He could be kind, thoughtful. When things were calm, I felt chosen, seen. Those moments kept me anchored, convinced that my doubts were just anxiety. I didn't realize then that consistency matters more than chemistry. And slowly, quietly, without announcing itself, The distance began to grow. Not enough to point at, just enough to make me question myself, which was exactly the problem. The shift didn't happen overnight. If it had, I might have trusted my instincts sooner. Instead, it crept in slowly, disguised as busyness and normal life changes. About 6 months before everything exploded, Evan started pulling away in ways that were easy to excuse if you wanted to. He took longer to respond to texts, not hours at first, just long enough that conversations lost their rhythm. When I asked how his day was, his answers became shorter. Busy. Crazy. Same stuff. When I tried to follow up, he'd change the subject or smile like I was worrying for nothing. Weekends changed too. He started going out more, usually with friends I'd never met or coworkers I only knew by name. When I asked if I could join sometime, he'd say things like, "It's kind of a work thing," or "You wouldn't enjoy it," or "Let's do something just us another time." Another time kept getting postponed. In early November, I finally tried to talk about it directly. We were at his place. I'd cooked dinner because he said he was exhausted from work. He sat across from me at the table, scrolling on his phone while I plated the food. "Is everything okay between us?" I asked. "Of course," he said without looking up. "Why wouldn't it be?" "You seem distant lately," I said carefully, "like you're pulling away." He finally looked at me, annoyance flickering across his face. "I'm not pulling away. I'm just busy. Work has been insane." "It's not just work," I said. "You're on your phone constantly. You're always making plans that don't include me." He leaned back in his chair and sighed, the kind of sigh that made me feel like I was already losing. "Because you're being clingy. I need space. I need to have my own life." "I'm not asking you not to have your own life," I said. "I'm asking you to include me in it sometimes." That's when his tone shifted. "This is exactly what I mean," he said. "You're needy." The word landed heavier than I expected. Wanting to spend time with my boyfriend of 5 years was needy. Wanting clarity was pressure. Wanting honesty was insecurity. We went in circles for 20 minutes. Every concern I raised became proof that something was wrong with me. Every example I gave was dismissed as overthinking. When I left that night, I felt like I'd done something wrong, but I couldn't name what it was. The pattern continued through November and into December. Canceled plans, disappearing weekends, distracted conversations. When we did see each other, his attention was split. His phone always close, his mind somewhere else. 2 weeks before the truth came out, I asked him the question I'd been avoiding. "Is there someone else?" The way he looked at me then wasn't anger, it was something colder. "You're so insecure," he said. "It's honestly pathetic." And somehow he made me apologize for asking. But the seed had already been planted, and it was growing fast. The night the truth surfaced didn't announce itself as a turning point. It arrived quietly, wrapped in exhaustion and doubt, long after the argument where he'd called me insecure and pathetic. I lay awake in my apartment staring at the ceiling, the room lit only by the soft glow of my phone on the nightstand. His words kept looping in my head. "You're so insecure." The way he said it hadn't been defensive. It had been dismissive, almost bored, like my concern was an inconvenience he'd already decided wasn't worth addressing. Around 2 a.m, something clicked. 3 months earlier, he'd asked me to help him set up a new tablet he'd gotten for work. He wanted everything synced. Email, calendar, messaging apps. I remembered sitting at his kitchen table, typing in passwords while he showered, joking that I was his personal IT department. At the time, it hadn't meant anything. I hadn't thought about it since. Until that night. I reached for my laptop, my hands trembling as I opened it. Part of me hoped I was being ridiculous, that I'd log in, see nothing, and feel ashamed for even considering it. Another part of me already knew better. I opened the messaging app. It logged in without resistance. The inbox loaded slowly, each conversation appearing like a weight settling on my chest. There were dozens of threads. Coworkers, friends, family. Most were harmless, short, infrequent. One wasn't. A woman's name I didn't recognize sat near the top, the timestamp recent. The message count alone made my stomach turn. I clicked it. The conversation started 4 months earlier, back in August. At first, it looked innocent, work-related, shared complaints about deadlines, inside jokes that developed too quickly for people who were just colleagues. By September, the tone had changed. Good morning messages, good night messages, long paragraphs instead of quick replies. By October, there was no pretending anymore. "I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was amazing. When can I see you again?" I felt nauseous. My throat tightened, and I had to pause, one hand pressed against my chest as if that could slow my heartbeat. I kept scrolling. Plans for dinners he'd told me were work events. Weekend trips he'd said were with friends. Photos she'd sent him. Photos he'd sent her. Nothing explicit, but intimate in a way that left no room for doubt. The kind of photos you only send someone you're emotionally involved with. The most recent message was from earlier that day. Can't wait for tonight, 8:20 p.m. at the usual place. Tonight. While I was sitting alone in my apartment questioning my sanity, he was preparing to meet her. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every date, every plan. I sent them to myself, backed them up twice more, my movements automatic, detached, like my body had taken over because my mind couldn't handle it yet. Then I closed the laptop. I sat in the dark, the silence deafening, trying to process what I'd just learned. My boyfriend of 5 years had been cheating on me for 4 months. And when I'd asked him directly, when I'd tried to talk about the distance, the secrecy, the constant cancellations, he'd called me insecure. He'd called me pathetic. I didn't sleep at all. At 7 in the morning, I texted him. We need to talk. Can you come over tonight? 3 hours later, he replied. Can't tonight. Busy. Maybe this weekend. My hands shook as I typed back. It's important. So is what I'm doing, he replied. This weekend. I'll let you know. I didn't answer. Instead, that evening, I did something small. Something he wouldn't notice unless he was paying attention. I sent a single character through the messaging app. Just a dot. A meaningless notification. At 7:30 p.m., I sent another. At exactly 8:00 p.m., one more. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. I answered calmly. Hey, he said, his voice tight. Are you using my messaging app? What do you mean? I asked. I'm getting notifications that someone's active on my account, he said quickly. Is that you? Why would I be on your messaging app? I replied evenly. I don't know, he said, and for the first time in months I heard panic in his voice. But someone is. Maybe it's a glitch, I suggested. It's not a glitch, he snapped. Someone has access. That's strange, I said. Have you been sharing your login with anyone? Silence. Long, heavy, telling. I need to go, he said finally. Talk later. He hung up. I sat back on my couch and waited. 20 minutes later, I logged back into the app and watched in real time as messages started disappearing, entire threads vanishing. His conversation with her gone. Other suspicious chats erased. He wasn't explaining, he wasn't denying. He was deleting. And in that moment, the truth stopped being something I suspected. It became something undeniable. I didn't confront him right away. I sat there in my living room with the lights off, the city humming outside my window, watching the screen like it might change its mind. Messages kept disappearing in real time. Threads erased. Names gone. 4 months of lies being wiped away in panic. That hurt more than the cheating. Because deleting wasn't confusion. Deleting was proof. At 7 in the morning, when I'd asked him to talk and he told me he was busy, I finally understood what busy meant. It meant choosing her again. By late afternoon, my body felt hollow. I hadn't eaten. My head ached. My chest felt tight in that dull, persistent way that comes from holding in too much emotion for too long. Around 6 p.m., I sent him one more message. We need to talk tonight. He didn't reply, so I waited. At 7:05 p.m., I heard my phone buzz. Then again, then it rang. I answered. Are you using my messaging app? He asked immediately. His voice was sharp, defensive, and underneath it, unmistakably afraid. What do you mean? I said calmly. I'm getting notifications, he said. Someone is active on my account. Is that you? Why would I be on your messaging app? I asked. I don't know, he snapped. But someone is. This isn't funny. Maybe it's a glitch, I suggested gently. It's not a glitch, he said. Someone has access. That's strange, I replied. Have you shared your login with anyone? Silence. Long enough for my heart to start pounding again. I need to go, he said finally. We'll talk later. He hung up. 20 minutes later, I logged back in and watched the rest of the messages vanish. That's when I knew he wasn't coming clean. He was covering his tracks. An hour later, my doorbell rang. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know it was him. I opened the door, and there he was, my boyfriend of 5 years, standing in my hallway like a stranger. His hair was messy, his eyes were wide, his confidence was gone. He didn't sit down. He didn't take off his jacket. He stood there with his arms crossed like he was bracing for impact. Did you hack my account? He demanded. Hack is a strong word, I said. You asked me to set up your tablet. I logged into your apps. You never logged me out. His face went pale. You've been reading my messages? He said. Just tonight, I replied, but that was enough. That's a violation of privacy, he shot back. So is cheating on your girlfriend for 4 months, I said evenly. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I can explain, he said finally. I'm listening, I replied, sitting down. Please explain how this isn't exactly what it looks like. He sank onto the couch, his head dropping into his hands. I didn't mean for it to happen, he said quietly. We were working together. We got close. It just developed. For 4 months, I said. You had an affair for 4 months. He didn't argue. You lied to me, I continued. You canceled plans with me to see her. You went on trips with her and told me you were with friends. And when I asked you directly if there was someone else, you called me insecure. You called me pathetic. I shouldn't have said that, he whispered. No, I agreed. You shouldn't have. Tears slid down his face. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking you could have both, I said. Me as the stable girlfriend you've been with for 5 years, and her as the exciting new thing. And when I started noticing, you tried to make me feel crazy. I was scared, he said. Of what? I asked. Of losing you. You already lost me, I said softly. He looked up at me then, truly desperate. Please, we can fix this. I'll end it with her. I'll do whatever it takes. I shook my head. I don't want you to end it with her, I said. I want you to leave. He stared at me, stunned. 5 years, he said. You're just throwing away 5 years? I met his eyes. Not me, you. He stood slowly, walked to the door, then stopped. You violated my privacy, he said bitterly. And you violated 5 years of trust, I replied. I think we're even. He left without another word. I locked the door, leaned back against it, and slid down onto the floor. I felt broken, but I also felt something else. Relief. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't questioning my sanity. I was finally listening to myself. The days after he left were a blur of noise and silence colliding at the same time. My phone wouldn't stop lighting up. Texts, missed calls, voicemails I didn't listen to. I blocked his number, then realized how many other ways someone can still reach you when they don't want to let go. Email, social media, mutual friends. He tried everything. I made a mistake. I'm ending it with her. Please don't throw away 5 years. The words came in waves, always just emotional enough to pull at the part of me that still remembered who he used to be, or who I thought he was. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I finally understood something I hadn't before. Conversations don't bring clarity when one person has already chosen deception. They only create more openings for manipulation. 2 days later, he showed up at my apartment. I didn't open the door. I watched through this peephole as he stood there, shifting his weight, running a hand through his hair, knocking again like persistence might rewrite reality. Please, he said through the door, just talk to me. I sat on my couch, heart racing, forcing myself not to move. After 10 minutes, he left. The next call came from his sister. He's not doing well, she said. You didn't have to end it like this. Like what? I asked quietly. By refusing to accept being lied to? He said you went through his private messages. He cheated on me for 4 months, I replied. Those messages didn't create the betrayal, they revealed it. She went quiet. Then came his friends. He's devastated. He knows he messed up. Everyone makes mistakes. I stopped answering, because this wasn't a single mistake, it was a pattern. Every canceled plan, every vague answer, every time he chose secrecy over honesty, every time he called me insecure instead of addressing my concerns. Those weren't accidents. They were decisions. A week later, I heard through a mutual friend that he was still seeing her. That part surprised me less than I expected. He hadn't fought for me when honesty mattered. Why would he suddenly become someone different now? What hurt more was realizing how long I'd been carrying the emotional labor alone. How often I'd adjusted, waited, minimized my needs to keep the peace. How small my world had become while I tried to make space for someone who was already living a double life. That realization changed something inside me. I stopped crying as much. I stopped replaying conversations. I stopped wondering what I could have done differently. Instead, I started noticing how quiet my mind felt without the constant self-doubt. No more checking my phone, wondering why he hadn't replied. No more apologizing for asking reasonable questions. No more being called insecure for trusting my instincts. The pain was still there, but it was clean pain, honest pain, not the kind that makes you question your reality. And slowly, beneath the grief, something else began to grow. Strength. Not the loud kind, the steady kind. The kind that comes when you finally stop arguing with the truth. The lowest point didn't come the night I found the messages. It came a week later, when the shock wore off and the silence settled in. That's when the questions started attacking me. Not his lies, mine. I woke up every morning with a heaviness in my chest, like my body still expected him to text. 5 years of routine doesn't disappear just because the truth shows up. My phone stayed quiet, and somehow that hurt more than when it wouldn't stop ringing. I kept replaying everything. The dinners I'd cooked at his place while he texted someone else. The weekends I stayed home because he was busy. The way I'd apologize for being emotional when he was the one disappearing. At night, the doubt crept in. Maybe I should have seen it earlier. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe if I'd given him more space. That was the most dangerous part. Because even after discovering the affair, even after seeing 4 months of proof, a part of me was still trying to take responsibility for his betrayal. That's what gaslighting does. It doesn't stop when the relationship ends. It echoes. One afternoon, I found myself standing in the shower, water running, realizing I'd been crying without noticing when it started. My chest felt tight. My throat burned. I pressed my forehead against the tile and slid down until I was sitting on the floor. 5 years. 5 years of loyalty, of showing up, of choosing him every day. And somehow, I was the one left feeling replaceable. That night was worse. I couldn't sleep, so I opened my laptop and reread the screenshots. Not to torture myself, but to remind myself I hadn't imagined it. Every affectionate message, every plan, every "can't wait to see you." And then I saw the timestamps. Messages sent while he was with me. Replies written minutes after kissing me goodbye. That's when something inside me finally broke. Not heartbreak. Illusion. I realized I hadn't lost a faithful partner. I had lost an idea I'd been protecting at the cost of my own self-respect. Still, the loneliness hit hard. I missed the version of him I thought was real. I missed the comfort of familiarity. I missed having someone to text about small, meaningless things. And for a moment, just a moment, I understood why people go back even after betrayal. Because emptiness can feel worse than pain if you're not careful. 2 days later, his best friend called. "She's not doing well," he said. "He's really struggling." I closed my eyes. "Is he still with her?" I asked. There was a pause. Yes. That answer hurt more than anything else he could have said. Not because I wanted him back, but because it confirmed what I already knew. He didn't want redemption. He wanted comfort. And once I was no longer available to absorb his guilt, he simply leaned into the next option. After that call, I sat alone in my living room and said something out loud for the first time. He never chose me. Not fully, not honestly, not when it mattered. That realization felt like free fall. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't empowered. I was empty. But emptiness has a strange gift. When there's nothing left to hold on to, you stop negotiating with the truth. And that was the night I finally stopped asking why he did it. Because the answer didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what I was going to do next. The turning point didn't arrive with a dramatic speech or a sudden rush of strength. It came quietly, almost unnoticed, on an ordinary morning when I realized something had changed. I woke up and reached for my phone out of habit. There was no tightness in my chest, no spike of anxiety, no urge to check if he'd called or texted. The absence didn't hurt the way it had before. That's when I understood I had crossed a line internally, not away from him, but toward myself. Later that day, I met a mutual friend for coffee, someone who had known us both for years. He hesitated before speaking, clearly choosing his words carefully. "I need to tell you something," he said. I didn't want to get involved, but he admitted it's been going on since August. He said he didn't plan to tell you. He thought it would just fade. I nodded slowly. That was the confirmation I didn't need, but it gave me something important. Closure without conversation. He also said, my friend continued, that when you started asking questions, he panicked. He thought if he could make you doubt yourself, you'd stop looking. That sentence landed harder than all the messages I'd read. Not because it surprised me, because it explained everything. The distance, the defensiveness, the way he attacked instead of reassured, the word pathetic used like a weapon. I wasn't insecure. I was perceptive. And the moment I trusted that truth, something inside me straightened its spine. That evening, I wrote a list, not of his flaws, not of his betrayals, but of my boundaries. What I would never accept again, what I would never explain away again, what I deserved without having to beg for it. I didn't send it to him. I didn't post it anywhere. It was for me. When he texted one last time from a new number, "Can we at least talk? I owe you that," I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I replied with one sentence. I don't need explanations from someone who chose deception. And I blocked the number. That was it. No shouting, no revenge, no public collapse. Just clarity. I realized then that the power in this story didn't come from catching him. It came from refusing to be convinced that my instincts were a flaw. That was the moment I stopped being the woman he could lie to and started being the woman who walks away without looking back. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It spread quietly, like ripples after a stone sinks. I didn't announce the breakup. I didn't post quotes or explanations. I told a few close friends the truth when they asked, plainly and without embellishment. That was enough. People talk, especially when the story finally makes sense. Within days, the tone around him changed. Friends who had once defended him stopped reaching out. Invitations he used to get dried up. A mutual acquaintance told me, gently, that people were uncomfortable around him now. Not because he cheated, sadly, people forgive that, but because of how he'd handled it. The gaslighting, the insults, the way he'd tried to turn my concern into a character flaw. His family didn't call me to argue. They didn't ask me to reconsider. His sister sent a short message instead. "I didn't know," she wrote. "I'm sorry." That was it. No excuses, no pressure. I heard through the same friend that he and the coworker were officially together within 2 weeks. That didn't sting the way I thought it would. It confirmed something I already understood. Once I stopped absorbing his guilt, he simply leaned into the next place where he could feel comfortable. What surprised me was how quickly my life began to rearrange itself. Without the constant emotional noise, I had energy again. I went back to the gym. I reconnected with friends I'd unintentionally sidelined while trying to be low maintenance. I started making plans without asking permission or bracing for cancellation. Work improved too, not because anything changed there, but because I did. I spoke up more. I trusted my judgment. I stopped second-guessing myself in meetings, the same way I'd stopped second-guessing my instincts in my relationship. One evening, I ran into him unexpectedly at a grocery store. He looked thinner, tired, like someone who hadn't slept well in a while. He hesitated when he saw me. Then he approached, careful, almost respectful. "You look good," he said. "Thank you," I replied. "I never meant to hurt you," he added quickly. "I just didn't know how to handle things." I nodded. "I believe you didn't know how. That doesn't change what you did." He looked like he wanted to say more, apologize again, explain, rewrite something. I didn't give him the opening. "I hope you figure out what you want," I said, "but it can't be at the cost of someone else's reality." He nodded, eyes down, and walked away. I didn't watch him leave, because by then, his consequences weren't mine to manage. The truth had already done its work. It's been a little over a month now, long enough for my nervous system to calm down, long enough for the nights to feel quiet instead of heavy, long enough for me to realize that what I'm feeling isn't loss anymore. It's relief. I don't wake up wondering why my partner hasn't texted. I don't rehearse conversations in my head before asking simple questions. I don't apologize for wanting honesty, time, or reassurance. I didn't lose a 5-year relationship the night I ended things. I lost it the moment he decided to lie instead of communicate, the moment he chose secrecy over respect, the moment he called me insecure and pathetic to protect his double life. Ending it was just acknowledging reality. Some people told me I should have tried to work through it, that 5 years is a long time, that everyone makes mistakes. But here's what I've learned. A mistake is a moment. What he did was a pattern. 4 months of lying, 4 months of planning, 4 months of choosing someone else while keeping me in the dark. And when I noticed, when my instincts did exactly what they're meant to do, he didn't reassure me. He attacked me. He tried to make me doubt my sanity, so I'd stop asking questions he didn't want to answer. That's not love. That's control. 5 years of loyalty and honesty are worth fighting for. 5 years that include months of betrayal and gaslighting are not. I don't hate him. I don't wish him harm. I don't even need closure from him. The truth gave me everything I needed. If you're watching this and something in your chest feels tight, listen to that. If you're being called insecure for asking reasonable questions, pay attention. If someone deflects, minimizes, and attacks instead of addressing your concerns, understand what that means. Your instincts are not the enemy. They are information. And sometimes all it takes for the entire illusion to collapse is one small notification from an app they didn't know you still had access to. She smiled when she unlocked her phone that night, and the smile vanished mid-breath when she realized I already knew. That was the moment the truth became unavoidable. I'm 33 years old. I ended a 5-year relationship not because I gave up, but because I finally stopped lying to myself. I didn't lose him. I got myself back.